Is that on? Yes? Yes? Here?
No.
Okay, good evening. Tonight is November 12th, and we're here to have our latest installment, I believe, the 8th meeting of our Stormwater Communication meeting. To kick off the meeting, I don't believe we had a sign-up sheet for public comment, but if anyone would like to address the group here tonight, we'll use the same standards we do for public comment during city council meetings, and that is for 3 minutes. If at the end of those 3 minutes, we may give you a gentle reminder to wrap up based on the work we're trying to complete here. So if there's anyone that has wants to participate in public comment, please raise your hand, go to the microphone, and be recognized. Mr. Crumry.
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett. I live in the 2nd Ward. Appears to be a typo on the agenda for item number 5 there. Let's review some of the comments made by representatives of the school district. July 23rd meeting, President Jim Collins, in regard to the York High School construction, quote, "Let's get this 15-year-old issue behind us as quickly as possible." Also during the July 23rd meeting, President Jim Collins stated, quote, "I had a choice of 20 minutes of getting something to eat or reading this. Frankly, I chose eating." July 9th, again, President Collins stated, "We are not looking to delay till December. We want to get you an answer as quickly as possible." But then during the August 13th meeting, John McDonough shared information about the Focus 205 community engagement sessions. Comments stated that the feedback received will help guide future planning in District 205 and produce a capital plan to understand the potential impact these stormwater proposals have on the educational plan. Quote, "In other words, we'll know more later than we know right now. Quote, we genuinely want to be part of the solution. Judge our actions and our positions in accordance with these guiding principles." Okay, let's judge their actions. August 13th meeting, while the Park District was talking, John McDonough and Board of Education President Shannon Ebner left the room at 7:45 and did not return until 8:50, requiring that everyone else up there take a 5-minute break to go find them out in the hallway. During the last meeting on October 29th, the agenda indicated that the Park District would go first and the school board second, alternating every other meeting, as has been the policy. John McDonough stated that the reason he requested to go first was, quote, "because we have a very brief update." He continued, quote, "While we are not particularly convinced that the twice-monthly public meetings contributed to expediting the process, we do appreciate the value of communication, both two-way communication with the parties, with a third party, the public, and that is very important." Upon completing his comments, Mr. McDonough left the meeting. And I'll emphasize, we appreciate the value of communication, both two-way with the parties, i.e. the school board and the city. Yet no professional courtesy advising that the next stormwater communication meeting on November 12th was in direct conflict with a Focus 205 meeting at York High School occurring right now. Questions. Has the school district formally stated that they are withdrawing from these meetings? Why is Superintendent David Moyer not in attendance here tonight? Again, let's remember the statement. Judge our actions and our positions.
Thank you, Mr. Crumry. Anyone else? Gentleman on the aisle here in the dark coat.
David Reginelli, 129 Pine Street. You know, we've had 8 of these meetings now. In the first meeting, I think I spoke and I said one thing we would get out of these meetings, if no progress, would be an understanding of where the party stood. And after 8 meetings, I think it's bottomed out. I think we're pretty close to understanding that. I just want to kind of summarize how I see it, kind of cutting through all the rhetoric, to use a nice word. There are two major red herring issues that I see with respect to the Park District. One is the 80-year extension on the lease for the truck garage. And the second, at least to, I think it applies to all the parks, but at least to Golden Meadows, is the replacement value of the land. I think we're at an impasse over these two issues, but they're really not the real issue. And you guys know that. I admire how many words you can use to kind of avoid the real issue. I've watched all these tapes. If I'm not here, I'm watching the tapes. Even when I am here, I watch them again to make sure I understand. The real issue is dual use and your refusal to accept it. And that's what it is. It's accepting that a few days a year, these parks will be encumbered, permanently encumbered. Yes, permanently encumbered. And the point to that is to save the taxpayers' dollars. Your position on requiring replacement value of Golden Meadows Pond, you just can say, we don't want to participate, because the city can buy 4 acres of land anywhere at full value, which is maybe $8 million, I don't know, with houses on it, because there isn't 4 continuous acres anywhere that doesn't have houses on it. And you guys know that. So you're saying no. So just say no. Just say no. But you know, that's not good enough, because then you're just jamming the taxpayer, or you're just giving us the finger, the residents who live in these detention ponds. You know, the people of Elmhurst should have a say about this, and I don't know, how this would be done. Maybe there's some lawyers, government people, government lawyers, but this should be a referendum. You guys should not have the ability to make this decision. There should be a referendum on this issue, because it has to be fixed. And what it really comes down to is the city spending $8 million to fix 20 homes, incremental to the $3 million to do the actual work. That's what this comes down to.
Mr. Reginelli, you're over your 3 minutes. If you could please wrap it up.
And then the other idea is maybe we should look at folding the Park District back into the city. I know there's a lot of hope for things like that in other communities, and maybe we should start here. Then the taxpayers wouldn't be jammed.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the meeting? Gentleman in the back.
Chris Farrell, 138 North Avon Road. As everyone's mentioned, this is the 8th meeting. This has been going on for a while. Doesn't seem like we've been getting anywhere lately, at least on the Park District side. I'd like to suggest, if you can't agree on anything else tonight, on any of the few major issues that are still remaining, if you can agree on a deadline and a plan to meet that deadline, and if you don't meet that deadline for an overall agreement, then agree that following Saturday, you're going to lock yourselves in a room together for 12 hours and hammer it out and just get it done. I mean, it's going to go on. This is going to drag on forever at this pace, and it seems like once we get through one pertinent issue, another issue raises its ugly head, and we're just back to the same point and kind of just spinning our wheels. So I'd like to suggest, if you could, just agree on one thing tonight, a deadline to get an IGA done, and a plan to get it done if you don't meet that deadline. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Kathleen?
Kathleen Sullivan. Couple of things. One is, 2 weeks ago at the park board meeting, we said that the city had everything they needed with regards to the restrictions for IDNR. The following night, we said they didn't have everything. Last Wednesday, we said they didn't have everything. So does the city now have what it's requested with regards to the IDNR restrictions, all of the documentation? That's one question. That's very important to answer to me, because the next step is to go to to get you guys to go to the IDNR if there's a way to break through it. Now, at the park board meeting last week, you had several things you talked about, such as dividing it into, to do each agreement separately if necessary. You also talked about, you guys seemed more willing to do the swap of public land, which technically is outside the IDNR restrictions as written, but the IDNR has said that they're open to everything. I've also heard that directly from Representative Belloc, who attended the meeting. And so I would just like to make sure that we move on this. It's very important to me, you know, because if you guys won't set a deadline, like Chris has asked, I might be setting a deadline for myself. This is just, I mean, I've spent 10% of my life on this issue, and that's a long time. If you think about a 10-year-old kid, that's a whole year of their life. It's been 5+ years that we've been coming here, and that's an awfully long time to expect people to live under the kind of stress that we're under. So really, I think those are great ideas. You know, let's just get it done. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Gentleman on the aisle.
Carlton Rink, 114 Pine, and I agree with these comments. Set some deadlines, get something done.
Ms. Wolf, if you would.
Paula Wolf, 444 North Larch. I hadn't intended to say anything, but I'm very impressed about the comments that have already been made tonight, and I think they're so valid, and I support everything they say. I think I mentioned something in the past, that Elmhurst is a city. We shouldn't be a three-part city. I feel like right now I'd expected more from the park board, more willingness and movement. The school board seems to have come up a little bit, which is great, but I feel like the park district has a chokehold on the residents. I don't understand, I guess, all your hesitation about the various fields and parks, because what good do they do the residents if they can't be used, if you can't travel to them? Aren't these parks for the children more than the adults? And can parents depend on having their kids play in these parks if they can't get to them? Courts Plus, is that a safe place when you have to shut it down? It takes on water, you can't use the restrooms or whatever? I don't understand why you're so hesitant. I feel like you're almost saying me, us, us, us. You're not saying what we need to do for the residents that supply the money. So I really wish you would start working with everybody and think of the residents, so we don't have to go through this for another year, worry about the spring storms. Hopefully this spring will be the last spring we have to worry. If you could just let go of what you think is yours. And it's not yours, it's for the residents in Elmhurst. We own it. Unfortunately, we cannot control it. You do. And I really wish you would listen to us, what we want. And you might not see, 100 bodies sitting in here speaking, but they're out there. They're thinking the same thing. And if a vote comes up for any of you or any of the projects you want, I can't see voting for anything until we're fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to address the meeting tonight? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close the public forum section of our meeting. We'll go on to next item, item 3, which is the general updates. Just want to highlight, first of all, Mayor Morley could not be here due to a work commitment, so he regrets not being present, but was obviously we'll be communicating with him after the meeting and giving him a status update. As it relates to 205, they could not be here tonight due to their communication meeting. Was it the 3rd meeting in their series of engagement meetings? So certainly they were invited, they had to decline, and they will be invited and have been invited to every meeting. And our hope is that when we meet the next time, that will probably be sometime the early part of December, that they can indeed join us. Just a few highlights as it relates to progress on stormwater projects. Certainly some good things happening. The parking lot across from Francesca's has been completed. That has stormwater detention capacity underneath, so it's good to see cars parked in there today. And the Webster Avenue project, if you've been down there, that's across the street from Sandburg Junior High. There is heavy equipment in that area, and there's earth being moved, so that's a nice thing to see. Other piece of progress, we as a city council have completely adopted or signed the ordinance, I guess we'd say, related to the Madison IGA. So we're going full on that, and as a schedule looks, we should be in a position. Okay, be in a position to have shovels in the ground next summer, depending on the schedule that 205 can provide us, and then I believe we'd be online by the end of 2016 on that project. So good progress in that. I'll turn it over to City Manager Grabowski here with his additional comments.
Thank you, Alderman. Really, the only thing I would add is that we're finalizing the Madison agreement with the attachments that are necessary, so that is fully complete and we can move forward.
You can go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'll give my update on District 205 because where we've been working on that is the superintendent and I have been meeting on a weekly basis to get the Bryan agreement done, which has to do with the gravel lot that's out in front of Bryan along Butterfield. So we met this morning, have our attorneys on the phone, and there was a school board meeting last night, and so they gave the superintendent some direction on where they wanted to be with that. And so we're talking about a number of things such as shared services, shared material storage, facilities. There's a number of different aspects to this, along with some property trade for that. So there's a number of questions that the school board still has and that the superintendent and his staff have. We have another meeting scheduled for next week to get our staffs together and continue that discussion, and we have scheduled already the week after that to continue the discussion. So that seems like a long time, but considering everyone's schedules, we're being consistent and continuing on that. Something that you just mentioned, Alderman, was the summer of 2016. It's my goal to get this agreement done and possibly design, bid, and construction starting in the summer of 2016 as well, along with and that's what I've said to the superintendent, is that's our goal, and so we need to work towards getting it done so all that can be in place.
Okay. I just wanted to add a couple other things to the comments. One area I didn't update was the Tree Streets project. The bid opening for that will be next Tuesday, so the engineering's been completed. It's out to bid with contractors. We'll have that bid opening, and then obviously the next steps in that project. One other thing that we talked about in our conversations with 205 is our desire to address the entire school board, and we're hoping to do that at their meeting on Tuesday, November 24th. That will give us the opportunity to address that entire group about all the expectations and all the projects and things that we've done up to this point, so that prior to their meeting on, I believe it's December 2nd, is that correct, Jim? Their fourth engagement meeting?
Yes.
I believe. Their fourth engagement meeting is related to buildings and infrastructure and everything that goes into what their future plans are. We want to make sure that everyone of their board understands what we've talked about as a stormwater communications entity, so that you know, they're all on the same page there. As it relates to our next meeting as a group, we want to do that after that communication meeting, so that probably puts us on Thursday, December 3rd. So we'll get that information out, and certainly we can talk about that at the end of this meeting as well. And then the last piece is related to the design drawings for York Commons. We've got those. Howard gave me a copy of those the other day. So as we start our discussion here tonight about Elmhurst Park District, we've made progress in that regard, and when we have an agreement, we can move forward with that. So I think that's all with the general updates. If we want to pass it over, the mic over to the Park District folks to add some comments, please do so.
I don't think we have any comments for a general update at this point.
Okay, let's get into the specifics. I'll turn it over to Jim. You can kind of start things off, and we can go from there.
Thank you. So at the last meeting, when we were talking, the concept of separate agreements was brought up. And that's something that Jim and I had kind of tossed around, similar to what we're doing with the school district. When we first started this process, we talked about how the IGA should look, and we thought that maybe a master agreement would work with some attachments to it. And then with the school district, we decided that separate agreements for each project were the way to go. Obviously, we've seen success with the school district in the Madison agreement and getting that done. And as I mentioned earlier, the superintendent and I continue to discuss the next one, which is the Bryan agreement, so on and so forth. So we collectively met and talked through the idea of separate agreements with the Park District, perhaps, for you to consider. We've talked through a number of issues that I think were good discussion and all relevant to an IGA, whatever form it'll come out to. The sticking points that we have on the 5 sites, the lease of the garage, and more importantly, the replacement or appraised cost for any park that's subject to the IDNR restrictions, that seems to be the biggest sticking point right now. And we've tried to figure out language as to how we can do that, and we'll continue to do that. But what we're going to propose tonight, and we're going to walk through it, is a separate agreement for York Commons. And so it looks a lot like the agreement that we had for all 5 sites, the master agreement, we'll call it. But this is specific to York Commons. And so we're proposing that for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is that it doesn't involve the IDNR. This is an agreement that I think the Park District has the full authority, unrestricted by any other agency, to agree to. I think we've come to terms on it as far as what we're going to do for the Park District, as far as when we build it, and we'll cover those terms here. And I think it's something that we can get done reasonably quickly and kind of move to the side. As Alderman Kennedy said, we can continue with our design drawings, we can get it out to bid, we can get some work done and get some relief in that one. So I'm going to pass out copies, and I apologize that I did not send them to you in advance. I know that we've tried to do that whenever possible to get these out, but as I mentioned, there has been so much discussion over it that if I would have sent it out, it probably would have been yesterday or the day before, and I don't know that you would have had the opportunity to review it anyway. And so what I'd like to do is go through a few things here, and then ask you to take it back to the park board and consider it, and then hopefully we can move forward on this.
If I could just add, I know this is new information. We're not expecting you to, break out your pen and sign this tonight. What we do want to do is step you through and just give you some of our thinking. Give you some of the logic behind it. If you guys have questions, certainly feel free to ask them. And then if you have questions in the future, certainly go ahead there. Like we talked about, the engineering drawings are done for York Commons. Again, there's no DNR restrictions, so, and this is the #1 priority that we've had with the Park District all the way along. And as we talked about at our last meeting, the concept of separating agreements, I think that's a really good idea because this ultimately, hopefully, can get a shovel in the ground as quickly as possible. So, I don't know if anybody else has any comments on the city side, but Jim, if you want to start stepping through.
I mean, I'd like to make a quick comment, I guess.
You can use the microphone.
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick comment. I guess we're all in agreement to cut and slice this thing up any way you'd like, and that's why we headed with the IGA that was a master. To pull out the DNR properties is really a pretty simple thing. So I think this is something that you guys could probably negotiate over the next few days and get it done. I don't see a need for a huge debate here tonight, or I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't anticipate a debate. I just want to
I
explain.
mean, it's pretty straightforward.
I want to explain where the points are in the agreement, and then we'll decide where we go from there.
Okay. I guess I'm hoping we get to the bigger issues. And again, I was hoping between this meeting and the last meeting that, again, we would have got together during the week and handled more of this stuff. And then here again, we are, just getting it at the last minute. So
Well,
we got to improve upon that so we can make progress.
Let's talk about this, and then after it, we can talk about DNR and DNR information and what we need to do so that we can talk through those restrictions. So you'll see, I'm not reading through the whole thing, but I'm just going to hit some of the points. It's specific to York Commons. You can see that in the title and the fourth whereas, it references that. Page 2, we reference the lease agreement that we both have, which is ending on April 30th of the year 2029. Further down, point number 2, the stormwater improvements, just explains that the city, at our sole cost, will design and construct those improvements. And then point number 3 talks about the recreational improvements, and that will be an attachment to this agreement, much the way that Madison was. So the specs that you have for basketball and volleyball courts, Jim, would be attached to this agreement as part of that. The next one, number 4, it talks about easements, both temporary and permanent, so that we can access the site when we need to for maintenance. And then point number 5 is something that I wanted to explain, and this is why I asked to do this tonight, Vince. So we have talked about an extension to a lease that ends in 2029. And so we had talked about that lease in exchange for 5 sites that we were looking for, and I think we generally came to terms on that. But what we're proposing in this is that we take that extension, that 79-year extension, and we rounded to 80, divided it by 5, and came up with 16 years for each agreement that we agreed to, which we anticipate would be 5, and so it would be the 80-year extension when it's all said and done. So what this does is the current agreement has 14 years left on it. This would give you an additional 16 years for 30-year extension, which would end in the year 2045, April 30th of 2045. And then as we go through Golden Meadows, East End, and so on and so forth, we would add to each one as we go through. Moving on through the next few pages, that is all the same as you have seen in the master agreement, so I won't repeat that, but stopping at page 6 on the tree replacement, and this is something, Jim, that I probably should have called you on to talk about, but Howard and I just talked about this today. The district came back and said, we think there's an error here, that 400 divided by the number of inches is really 133 per inch. That's not the way we came up with this. This was deliberately $100 per inch and $400 for a tree. And the reason why is the $100 per inch comes from the average cost per inch of trees that we ordered this year. So this is directly from our tree bid, and it was $100. The $400 per tree is like a minimum. So the minimum we would pay you is $400 for a 3-inch tree, and that was the cost of a replacement tree plus installation this year. So that's how we came to those numbers.
Just to clarify, just the one point, thank you for that. We didn't think that the 100 was an error. I mean, I think I'm just saying, we didn't think it was in error as terms of your calculation. I think we understood it, but I appreciate the clarification.
Oh, I understood it when we talked that you said, hey, this divided by 3 should really be 133, and that was not the way it was.
No, I think we understood how you calculated it. We went back and we looked at tree values and what we've purchased and things like that. We're working with our park staff and also our engineer and had proposed the 133, but I understand how you've calculated it.
Okay. Moving 2 points down, number 8, Park District may also elect as it starts. This came from our last meeting, and if you recall, Alderman Toledo had suggested a clause in there that says that any cash that we pay the Park District, if you elect to take it, is for use as tree replacement in public park locations. So we would like to see that language added. So moving through the document, again, a lot of it is similar. On the termination clause, page 9, number 15C, we had talked about, or we had proposed, and I'm not trying to renegotiate it, only it was 1 year as we had it, if the city doesn't enter into an agreement for construction within 1 year, the district can cancel the agreement. The more we thought about that, the more a better cushion is 2 years if the district would be open to that, only in case we get delayed for one reason or another, or some language that just says will not be unreasonably withheld.
And Jim, let me add, I think that's the same terms we agreed to with 205. And I think the idea was if there was something that prevented us from being ready to go in a year, obviously our intent is to move as quickly as possible, but if it got to the 366th day for whatever reason, it wouldn't be, the agreement wouldn't be null and void. So it just is a little bit of a safety net there, but by all means, we're going to move forward as quickly as we can.
Thank you. And that is what I wanted to highlight out of this draft. And so just to kind of recap, this removes all references to the IDNR and grant replacement property, which the master agreement did talk about. Changing course to to an individual agreement is quicker in our opinion, considering that we have the issues, the big issues that are out there on the replacement costs. And then the individual agreements were brought up at the last meeting, so we talked about that. We think it's a good way to, or something to explore as we go through this. We think we can get through it quickly and really get this project moving in short order.
Thank you, Jim. I think, just to highlight there, basically what we're talking about is same basic agreement and this just related to your comments. The 16-year lease agreement, again, 79 approximately divided by 5. Some clarification on the tree replacement and then moving forward. So I think certainly if you guys want to ask a few questions, but our hope would be, since I believe you guys have your meeting next week, that you could potentially get this on your agenda and have a good discussion so that we come back on the 3rd. Hopefully, we're talking about this already being done and we're moving on to the next projects. And certainly, as it relates to the additional projects, we just got the information this week related to the IDNR stuff. So there's quite a bit of information from what I understand. So we need to digest that on our side, and then we'll be back to you with another additional agreements for the other projects as quickly as that can happen. Anything else?
No, that's exactly
Okay.
what I was going to say.
I know from the Park District team, do you guys have any questions or comments related to this?
No, we appreciate you taking us through it. We will review it. We do have stormwater on the agenda for the Park Board's meeting next Wednesday, and so I would imagine we'll have an opportunity to discuss it with the Park Board at that point in time.
Good. And if you guys have any questions in the meantime, certainly city staff and Jim Grabowski's team is here to answer any of those. We will, I have a copy of the drawings, Howard. I'm assuming we can pass these on. If you guys want those are the preliminary engineering drawings of the project at York Commons. So if you want to share those with V3, or we can get you guys electronic copies, whatever you need to move forward on that, and we can get going.
If you wouldn't mind, if you could send us electronic copies of that and at least electronic version of this so we can share it with the
Oh, yeah.
park board, that
Yeah,
would
no
be great.
problem. No problem. I don't know if Alderman Honquist or,
So we're basically down to two issues. Are those, first reaction, I know you guys got them, but does that seem fair enough based on our previous conversations to, I mean, you're two of the 7 people deciding on this in the main group. So what's your reaction? Is it fair to go with this kind of format going forward?
Perfectly fair to break it out.
Okay.
You know, whether we agree to all the particulars in terms of the garage, that's going to have to be debated.
Okay.
if you don't mind just repeating that.
Again, I think, you know, we agree to breaking out the parks. We always have. I mean, we've never said it had to be 5 altogether or whatever, so this is good. And I think we're pretty far along with the IGA, so for you to be able to do this is really pretty simple, so this is good. And I think we just owe it to the park board to sit down and talk about your new offer. So
Yeah,
most of it doesn't seem too bad, but obviously the garage is going to be the biggest issue.
I was specifically just asking the two of you if you think the 16-year, how the garage was split up is fair and something you'd support back with your group.
I'm not going to think about it.
Yeah, I think we just need to process what you just gave us and have some discussions with the park board, and we'll get back to you.
Okay, I know there's probably many people disappointed. We're not going to go till 9:30 or 10 o'clock tonight, but we've, I believe, accomplished what we set out to do tonight. So unless there's any other comments, we'll go ahead, close the meeting, and thank everyone for their attendance.
Next
Again,
meeting.
yes?
Sorry, we need to talk about the next meeting date.
Yeah, I was going to get if we could look at our schedules, and I'm just going to propose that I believe Thursday, November 3rd, December, excuse me, I'm sorry. Time's flying. Thursday, December 3rd is a place to look at the next meeting if we could.
Right, we will be unable to do that night. The Park District hosts our annual tree lighting event in Wilder Park that evening, so unfortunately, we can't meet that night.
Okay. Is that for that whole night, or, you know, if we were to delay till 7:30?
Starts at 6 o'clock, usually ends 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30, something like that. Starts at 6.
Okay. Is there, what's your meeting schedule for December? Do you happen to have that? For
Yep,
your
meeting
team?
on the 2nd and the 16th.
2nd and the 16th. So if we were to look at potentially December 10th, is that would be 1 week later?
Is there a need for a meeting as much as you need a response to this document?
That's a good point.
We'd love a response. I mean, and certainly we can move outside of this meeting if we need to. I think I'd like to get a meeting. You know, Mayor Morley asked to always have the next meeting scheduled. So if we can have it on the docket for Thursday, December 10th, I think that would be great. And you know, again, if we don't have a lot to talk about, we're quick and we're on to the next thing.
We got to talk about it.
Okay.
Just a minute.
Perhaps actually the 9th might work better. I know there's an event on the 10th that a number of us attend, so
No board meeting. Does that work for you? guys?
Wednesday the 9th
The 9th?
might work better.
No, we're 2nd and 16th because of the switch. I know. Okay, all right, let's pencil it in for the 9th.
December 9th, 7 PM here.
All right, everyone, thank you. Have a good night, and have a good Thanksgiving. Take care. Bye.